Once again, it's time for March Caprice, the event that comes once a year to herald our collective love for Square Enix's fourth most beloved franchise. This year's theme is Homecoming, and while I could have whipped out a scale replica of Destiny Island or something, I wanted to do things a little differently. Because you know who doesn't get a homecoming? The little guys. I'm in Toy Box, and these poor little Popcats are sad and cold and all alone in the game store. They're homeless, destitute, begging me for help. All they want is to frolic around the play place and use the toddler slide, but these gigas are scions of capitalism, harassing my poor little meow meows and charging them extortionate tolls to pass through. So you know what? I'm gonna take matters into my own and make them their own little Popcat playhouse. Because quite frankly, making a detailed scale model of Destiny Island was a very frightening prospect. My little pottery platoon begins as tightly compressed balls of foil. I wrap them in a layer of clay, and once they're baked, I slice the tops off and hollow them out. The inside is quite rough, so I brush it with liquid clay and press a fresh layer into the walls. I repeat the process on the outside, and try to get it as spherical as possible to cut down on the sheer amount of sanding this will require. I sand the outsides with progressively finer bits of sandpaper to get the surface silky smooth. Once I'm satisfied with the texture, I roll out a strip of clay and wrap it around the rim, making sure it's firmly attached. The bottom needs an opening for the Popcat body, and I carefully carve out chunks from it using a hobby knife. Using a sanding bit, I clean up the edges and remove excess thickness from the inside. Here's a great example of why knife safety is important, kids. As I was cutting into this pot, my knife hit a weak spot and slipped, stopping less than a millimeter from my thumb. Here it is again, in slow motion. Don't do that. The lids start as rounded clay discs, and after sanding, they get the same rim treatment as the pots. They're finished up with a little hole for the center for the hair tufts. I make two different styles of tuft, one side-swept and one slicked back slightly. The Popcat heads start just like the pots, but instead of being hollowed out, they get a mix of facial expressions. My first cat is feeling a little shy. It gets a pair of tiny paws to prop up its pot lid, complete with teeny tiny toes. My second cat will be hiding in its pot with a pair of large outstretched arms. The other three will need proper heads and bodies. They all get a set of big floppy ears with fluffy tips. This one gets a little set of paws clutching its pot. And this one also gets a pair of paws, but they're a little different. Popcat bodies are long and thin with tiny legs, so I reinforce them with wires. The tails are very delicate, so I make them out of bent armature wire. With all my Popcat pieces in place, I can set them aside and get started on their new home. Now, I'm no carpenter, but I think I can put together a simple playground. I cut out two pieces of foam to make a central platform and roof. By a very nice coincidence, my sander has the same diameter as these wooden dowels I picked up. A nice, snug fit. They're a little long though, so I trimmed them. The edges of the platform look really rough, so I add wooden trim to make them a little prettier. Looks good, but there's a couple gaps, so I pull out the foam putty and smooth it into the cracks. I cut up a bunch of jumbo-sized craft sticks for the roof shingles. After sanding them all even, I line them up and secure them together with a strip of painter's tape. I attach my two roof panels to a central support made with a smaller dowel. I make two triangular side panels out of thin craft wood and sand them until everything fits perfectly flush. And I gotta say, it came out even better than I expected. With the structure assembled, I can start adding more details. On the bottom layer, I add a set of crossbars, sanding the ends slightly concave to fit them more snugly against the supports. I also cut a square out of this panel and wedge it into place. I cut out a set of tiny wooden cylinders and turn the panel into a tic-tac-toe game. I need a set of stairs for the platform, so I cut them out of lightweight foam. Always make sure your superglue is safe to use on foam. You don't want to ruin all of your hard work. My next side panel is door-shaped, with a hole cut out of the center to peek through. I also use this foam to make the sides of my slide, and sand the curves nice and smooth. My foam isn't flexible enough to make the bottom though, so for that I use a piece of sturdy cardstock. By gluing it little by little, I can follow the shape of the slide. To add the illusion of thickness, I glue a second piece on the underside, and sand everything flush. The final piece of the house is a wooden railing with bars that totally came out perfect on the first try. Before moving on to painting, I make a set of clay fabric cubes. I start by giving all of my foam a coat of black Mod Podge. This is just a 50-50 mix of Mod Podge and black acrylic paint, and it's wonderful for sealing and priming foam without melting it. After my spray primer melted the foam props in my Deltarune project, I did not want that to happen again. Black Mod Podge will never hurt me. Once it's dry, I prime everything with a much gentler white airbrush primer. The first round of color is yellow, on this cheese-looking panel I made off camera, and the wooden railing. The stairs get a vibrant green, and the tic-tac-toe set gets a sky blue. I wanted to make the peekaboo door blue too, but I lost control of my singular brain cell and made it yellow, and I honestly couldn't be bothered to change it. I choose a bright cherry red for the slide and the roof. Next, I pick fiery orange for the crossbars and central platform. The final color for the house is a deep purple on the support beams. The cat pots each get a different Popcat appropriate color. Their bodies also get base coats of their lighter colors, including a non-canon gray. For the fabric cubes, I go for a pink, purple, blue trio. I take a moment to admire my finished playhouse and tidy up the lines. The blue was a little dark for my tastes on the cubes, so I go over it with a much lighter one. I paint each side with a Kingdom Hearts related doodle, using unthinned paint for an intentionally choppy look. They really came out perfectly terrible. For my KH-themed tic-tac-toe, I make the O's coconuts and the X's paopu fruit. I gingerly sponge black paint on the white Popcat's extremities. I'm being super careful here, because fixing black stains on white paint is a pain in the ass. This might be the cleanest black on white I've ever done. I mask off the beige bits on this Popcat's face, and give the face and body a coat of black paint. The black Popcat also gets red tips on its ears, feet, and tail. The special gray Popcat gets white tips instead. Everyone's eyes get a coat of white, then the signature heartless yellow. The white helps the yellow really pop. Now it's time for the trickiest part, painting the patterns on the pots. First up is orange, and since I already did the white trim, all it needs is a set of black diamonds along the sides. I tidy up my little gray guy, and fill in the red of his mouth. After gluing him together, the only thing left is his heartless emblem.
Look! It's you!
Next, the blue pot's lid gets a series of dots around the rim. The pot itself needs white swirls down the sides. Now that's a long cat. The yellow pot's pattern is a little more intricate, with a jagged orange bottom and white and yellow diamonds. The lid gets a matching orange pattern. The yellow Popcat's arms need yellow claws and red paw pads. Don't tell the other Popcats, but this one is probably my favorite. Our shy green Popcat needs a layer of drippy dark green and white teardrops. Finally, the red Popcat, with the most intricate lid, and a yellow arrow pattern down the sides. Each arrow gets a white diamond, and the bottom gets a jagged orange pattern. By far the most complex, but with everything painted, all that's left is making a base. I want to make some of that fake playgrass, and this dark square of foam will work just fine. I give it a black base coat, a coat of dark green, and a thick layer of glue. I sprinkle fine green flock all over it, making sure I'll be finding pieces of fake grass on my desk for months. It looks perfect, but there's a large empty space down here. I have an idea though. What playground is complete without a sandbox after all? This popsicle stick sandbox frame won't win any beauty awards, but it's good enough. To add more depth, I cut out a small pit in the foam before gluing my frame. I brush it with umber ink for a weather-worn look, and spill almost the entire bottle on my desk and shirt. Thankfully, this is one of my designated painting shirts. I fill up the sandbox with, well, sand. As I assemble everything together, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to like this video. For how simple the end product looks, this was a deceptively complicated thing to make. And the entire project took me over 40 hours. A solid quarter of that was probably just sanding things. This sandcastle, in contrast, took me about 2 minutes to make, and is probably my favorite thing here. Real quick, before the glamour shots, if you haven't already, you should go check out the March Caprice website. There's a lot of cool stuff there. Anyway, let's watch some cats spin. Just look how happy they are now. My kitty quintet is living the good life, which means that my job here is done. Thanks so much for watching till the end. This video is extra special because it's not just March Caprice, it also marks the 1-year anniversary of my channel. I'd like to think that I've improved over these 12 months, and I'm really excited to see what else I can make. I read all of your kind comments, and it makes me really happy that I can bring a little joy to other people's days. Go check out all the other wonderful things that these passionate fans have put together, and have a wonderful rest of your day.